Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Redistricting is the most fun topic we can talk about tonight. I will only be here for 4 hours. I'm kidding. So back in 2018, as Marianne said, the residents of Michigan adopted Proposal 2, which created the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Can I ask, I'm going to put you all on the spot. Raise your hand if you voted in favor of Proposal 2. You can all stay. If not, and you don't want to raise your hand, we will forgive you anyways. So this commission, which is made up of 13 random individual residents of Michigan, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 5 politically unaffiliated, also known as independents, will draw the new lines here in Michigan for our congressional seats, which we're going to go from 14 to 13, the 110 seats in the Michigan House of Representatives, and the 38 seats for our Senate. There are actually 2 forms of redistricting that are going to happen here in Michigan in 2021. We have the redistricting done by the state commission, and then we have local redistricting that will redistrict our county commission lines. And I'm going to speak to that very briefly at the very end of my presentation. So when the voters adopted Proposal 2 back in 2018 and they created this commission, there was rules and criteria for who could serve on the commission. And as it was pointed out, most of you here are precinct delegates. And if you are not eligible to serve. But it goes a little bit further. Neither is your spouse, your parents, or your children. You can't serve or be eligible to serve on the commission. But it's not over yet. If you ever held a public office in the last 6 years, including a library board, you're not eligible to run and serve on the commission. If you've donated to a political candidate in the last 6 years, you're not able to serve on the commission. So redistricting is one of the most legally, technical, complicated things that you can do in the political process. And we have 13 residents who hadn't ever donated to a candidate, ran for precinct delegate, were never a candidate themselves, who suddenly wanted to participate in the most detailed, legally complicated process that we do. The United States Constitution actually mandates that we do redistricting every 10 years. It's the way to reapportion our congressional seats across the country. And then in the states, make sure that your representatives who represent you in your state capital and in Washington, D.C., actively reflect the district and the population that lives there now, not the district as it looked like 100 years ago. And so that is why we do redistricting every 10 years. So the criteria of which the commission has to use to draw the lines, you will be shocked to learn changed under Proposal 2. So we're going to run through what the criteria is, why it's important, and how it's you guys can participate in this process. So first and foremost, there are 7 criteria that the commission has to consider when drawing our new lines. In the order of importance, this is now mandated in our Constitution. First and foremost, the districts have to include the same number of people. And on the congressional level, that literally means down to a person, same number of people in them. They also have to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act. The Federal Voting Rights Act protects the rights of minority voters and creates things like majority-minority districts, which in Michigan, on the congressional level, is the current 13th and 14th district. So when voters, not politicians, back in 2017 and 18, were advocating for the gerrymandering ballot proposal, they frequently would use photos of the 13th and the 14th district. They look really funny. One of them comes out of Detroit to the west, and then it goes up north. It's got a little triangle at the top. And the reason that it was drawn that way is they have to encompass so many minorities in the district to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And that act has not changed. So although we, the voters, changed our redistricting process, the federal laws, which the commission has to use, has not changed. So criteria 1, same number of people, follow the Federal Voting Rights Act. Criteria number 2, Districts must be contiguous, which means they have to touch. You have to be able to drive from one side to the other side without ever leaving the district. The third criteria, here is where the ballgame has changed. The third criteria used to be something called respecting municipal lines, keeping municipalities intact, keeping our townships and our cities whole when possible, or on the congressional level, our counties whole when possible. That's now the second to last criteria. And the third criteria has now changed. It's something that we've never done in redistricting before. And it's a criteria that says that the districts shall reflect Michigan's unique and diverse population and communities of interest. Raise your hand if you've heard that term before, and not in a redistricting email. Okay. The term community of interest is literally undefined. It's not defined in the Constitution, except the Constitution does say that a community of interest is not an affiliation with a political party, a political candidate, or an incumbent. That's the only thing it says. We also know that communities of interest are not defined in our state laws. It is a literally ambiguous term that means everything and nothing all at the same time. So how is the commission how are these 13 people going to define communities of interest? Well, the Constitution sets forth the process by which they have to do that. The Constitution requires that the commission hold at least 10 public meetings throughout Michigan to hear from us, the residents, about how we define communities of interest. They've decided to have 16 meetings throughout Michigan. The first one starts tomorrow down in Jackson, and they run all the way through the 1st of July. The closest locations to here are Novi, and they are going to be on Novi in June 8th. And I will make sure that they have all of the dates, times, and locations for all of the meetings, and a majority of the meetings are going to happen in Southeast Michigan. So your first way that you can help in this is we need conservatives to talk to the commission and to submit your idea of what a community of interest looks like in Oakland County. It's imperative for us to participate in this process. We know that the Democrats are sitting there. They are helping the commission define communities of interest. The University of Michigan last year submitted a report about 60 pages long to the commission on how they believe the commission could define communities of interest. And you will be shocked to learn that most of those include things about how we look, how we talk, or what type of language we speak, not about where we live or our state as a whole. So there is a very big reason as to why the Democrats, and if anybody tells you Voters Not Politicians is a nonpartisan organization, you can laugh at them because they're not. They are a liberal, progressive, partisan organization helping the Democrats. And there's a reason why this became the third interest here in Michigan, the third criteria which they have to use. Everybody has seen the hotspot of what our state looks like. It's all red, except for some in Southeast Michigan, some in Grand Rapids, a little bit of blue over near the tip of our fingers. But for the most part, our state is pretty Republican. And that's because of how we have chosen to live. Republicans tend to live in the rural areas of our state, and Democrats tend to pack themselves into urban cities. Down in Southeast Michigan, there are Detroits that win their state house races by 90 to 95%. The largest Republican wins near 80 lately. You won't find a 90% Republican district anywhere in Michigan, but you will in Southeast Michigan. So why does the commission or the Democrats want to use communities of interest instead of municipal lines? Because they want to blow open municipalities and drag urban living Democrats into rural districts of Michigan. Imagine kind of like a wagon wheel where they want to spoke the Democrats out. If they take that 90% Democrat seat and they take 20% of the vote, it's still a 70% Democrat seat. They're going to win it, no doubt. But now they're going to put that other 20% in what used to be a 55% Republican seat that we no longer have a shot to win that either. So down in Oakland County, And once you get into Southeast Michigan, this is really important for you guys to participate in this process. Who here, by a raise of hands, is worried about things like critical race theory and vaccination passports? Right? What do you think, if Gretchen Whitmer happens to win again, what do you think the first thing she would do with a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate is do? So we would look like California, New York, Illinois within the matter of 8 weeks. I cannot really stress enough how important redistricting is in 2021 for conservative activists around the state to participate in this process. And it's not because you're going to find people like me say that I want Republican maps, because I don't want Republican maps. I want fair maps. I want the commission to draw fair maps, and then the rest of us have to do our part in 22. We have to recruit good candidates to run. We have to elect good candidates in the primary. We have to make sure that they have the money that they need to win. And then we have to make the residents of Michigan believe in our message and win majority in the Michigan House and the Michigan Senate next November. But if we get through 2021 and we get through the redistricting process, and no matter how much money we have, no matter how good our candidates are, we can only win 48 state house seats and you need 56 to majority, none of it matters. So this is really important for us not to let the commission sit in an echo chamber. The Democrats are very annoyed that we are participating in this process because they thought for sure that we wouldn't. Republicans tend to have the propensity to not participate in a process if we don't like it, or if we think it's unfair, or if we think we're going to get screwed in the end. It was pointed out, I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I'm coaching my daughter's 6-year-old softball team. If anybody wants to come help next week, you have to have the patience of Job, but we can make it work. I would not be spending my time away from my kids and leaving softball practice if I didn't think this was going to make a difference. And I think it's going to make a difference because I know it's making a difference. Because we have already impacted a number of things that the commission has done. We have been successful in 95% of our calls to action on the commission. We've kind of learned how they function. So when you are submitting your input to the commission on what a community of interest looks like, let's run through that a little bit. How should we as conservatives view communities of interest? We know right away that the Democrats are going to argue that communities of interest should ignore municipal lines, should ignore city and township boundaries. So we as conservatives need to think of alternative ways to describe our local area other than walking into the commission to say, I live in Northville Township, keep my township whole because I like my township. So you want to think of things like your school district lines. Do you have a regional police or fire authority? Do you have a recreation authority that covers a couple of cities or townships where your kids play athletics? Do you live in a historical neighborhood downtown? Is there a taxing authority or something special about the area that you live in? You can think of things like a homeowners association. You can think of things when you're in the northern part of the county, agriculture. Are you part of an FFA club, a 4-H club? Do you homeschool, and are you part of a homeschool co-op? These are all unique ways that we can define our geography different than just our municipal lines. Don't get too tied up on size. The commission is drawing seats from hundreds of thousands of individuals in a congressional level, all the way down to 90,000 for a state house level. But really in Southeast Michigan, this is where the terms are going to be defined. We want to try to keep the cities whole. We need Dearborn to have 1 state representative, not 4 state representatives. We need Warren to have 1 state representative, not 2 or 3. So we have to think of things down here that help keep those municipalities intact, together, and being represented in really what you should as little people as possible. Because when you're a local municipal elected official, you don't want to deal with 5 state representatives for 1 city issue. You want to deal with 1 or maybe 2, depending on the size of your city. So think of things like that. When you're talking to the commission or you're participating in our calls to action, You are a resident of Michigan. You are Meghan Reckling. You live at 620 North Kane Road, Weberville, Michigan, and that's it. You're not a precinct delegate. You're not a Republican voter. You are just a resident of Michigan. It's our constitutional right to participate in this process, and so we want to do so in a nonpartisan way when we're talking to the commission. I am going to make sure that there's a whole bunch of other documents that go with how we speak and what the tips are that we have to speak before the commission. So the first call to action that I have for you guys tonight is to sign up to speak at a meeting. We really have to make sure we get people there. Secondly, participate in the weekly calls to action that you see for myself for the Michigan Republican Party. We just issued one last week, and it's not too late, and actually we would completely appreciate your help helping here. The commission released their public online comment portal tool. So it's a tool and a website where you can go and give a feedback to the commission. They're only requesting that you submit your first name and your email address, not your address, not your zip code. And the commission's reasoning is because they say that public comment falls under Michigan's Open Meetings Act and that any resident per the OMA can submit comment, which is not untrue. It is true. However, the Constitution requires that the commission hear input from Michigan residents on how we define communities of interest. How we define. Not the residents of California, New York, China, Russia. We want our residents to define what we think our lines should look like. So I encourage you to reach out to the commission, ask them to at least make the zip code field or the address field mandatory so that when they are looking at the comments, they can say this one's from California, this one's from Michigan. We should probably weight the one from Michigan a lot more when we're deciding how to draw the lines.